The Galactic Council had always expected fear from young species, the kind of trembling compliance that came naturally when confronted with civilizations millions of years older. That expectation shattered the moment humanity's message arrived. No elaborate phrasing, no ceremonial opening, no diplomatic courtesies, just a single, flat transmission delivered without hesitation. The entire chamber froze, confused at first, then alarm rising like heat from steel. No one had ever refused council protocol. No one had ever dismissed the gravity of a summons. The message was so short that the analysts ran it through translation cores repeatedly, convinced something had been lost. But there was no error. Humanity had responded with the same unflinching directness their explorers were known for, the same tone they used when warning their own species of danger. "We do not negotiate under threat." What terrified the Council was not the content but the certainty behind it. Every species they'd encountered had approached negotiations like a plea for survival, offering concessions before the Council even asked. Humans did the opposite. They offered nothing. They requested nothing. They simply rejected the foundation of galactic diplomacy. Across the chamber, panic took root as delegates whispered about the implications. Humanity was a Death World species, forged under pressures no Council simulation could replicate. Their refusal wasn't a misstep. It was deliberate. It meant something had triggered a line they did not permit anyone to cross. Admirals from older empires reviewed humanity's brief but violent conflicts with hostile species. They saw patterns the Council had ignored. Humans negotiated eagerly when treated fairly, but when cornered, they acted with an intensity no other species possessed. The sudden rejection seemed like the precursor to a decisive action. That fear spread quickly. Thousands of years of precedent had taught the Council one rule: predictable species could be controlled. Humans were not predictable. Their history was a catalogue of impossible survivals, emerging stronger after disasters that would have ended other civilizations, turning ecological collapse into innovation, mastering harsh climates that killed other migrants instantly. Their colonies on worlds the Council labeled incompatible had grown into trade hubs within decades. The Council believed they understood strength, but human strength operated on a different axis entirely. Their adaptability bordered on unnatural. Their will to endure was legendary. Every species had stories about the humans who trekked through storms without exocets, or rebuilt shattered outposts with nothing but determination. Delegates replayed those accounts now, each tale feeding the growing sense of unease. If such a species refused to negotiate, then they had already committed to a course of action that didn't require approval, oversight, or permission. It was the kind of confidence only a civilization with hidden capabilities could possess. Attempts to rationalize the refusal failed instantly. Strategists suggested that humanity might be preparing a retaliatory strike. Xenopsychologists countered that humans rarely initiated conflict without reason, but when provoked, they ended it with brutal efficiency. A few optimistic delegates suggested reaching out again, but even that idea terrified the Council. What if the humans interpreted repeated contact as hostility? The message they sent was not just a refusal, it was a boundary. And boundaries set by humans, history showed, were not crossed safely. The chamber's tension deepened as projections showed the possible outcomes of misreading human intent. Every scenario where the Council pushed further ended disastrously. Fleets lost. Trade disrupted. Borders destabilized. Worse still, humanity's alliances with younger species, alliances built through genuine trust rather than coercion, meant the Council could not predict how far human influence had already spread. Humanity didn't need grand declarations. They changed galactic balance simply by choosing where to stand. Rumors raced through the political networks that humanity might withdraw entirely from Council dealings. Some species panicked at the thought. Human logistical hubs supported entire sectors. Their medical technology stabilized fragile colonies. Their engineers optimized failing infrastructures wherever they traveled. Losing all that would cripple regions already struggling with overextension. The Council suddenly understood how deeply humanity had integrated without ever claiming authority. A species that could uplift entire regions simply by existing would be catastrophic if angered. The silent dread thickened until even experienced diplomats struggled to maintain composure. Humanity had not issued threats. Humans didn't need to. Their refusal alone communicated a message clearer than any ultimatum. They only negotiated freely, never under pressure. And if the Council had attempted to strong-arm them, they had miscalculated on a scale so vast it defied precedent. In that moment, the Council realized something far more terrifying than war. Humanity wasn't acting out of fear or arrogance. They were acting from principle. A species that made decisions based on conviction rather than coercion could not be manipulated. And a species that could not be manipulated was a species the Council had never learned how to deal with. The Council's decision to convene its xenopsychology divisions only deepened the alarm. Specialists across dozens of worlds began dissecting every fragment of humanity's history, desperate to locate a motive behind the refusal. What they found only magnified their fear. Humans lacked the predictable emotional templates that governed most species. Their responses shifted with context, shaped by experience rather than instinct. A gesture of cooperation in one era transformed into fierce defiance in another. This inconsistency wasn't chaotic, it was adaptive. To the analysts, it meant humanity could not be mapped using standard diplomatic models. Any attempt to predict their next move risked catastrophic misinterpretation. The archives painted a disturbing picture for anyone trying to treat humans like a conventional faction. Their evolution had produced a species that defaulted to innovation under pressure. Where others faltered, humans improvised solutions from scraps. They built shelters during storms that should have wiped them out. They turned failing ecosystems into thriving biomes through sheer determination and experimentation. Even in war, their tactics evolved mid-conflict, often faster than adversaries could respond. The Council realized that if tensions escalated, humans would adapt faster than their bureaucratic machinery could process. Past encounters with hostile empires provided further insight. Humanity didn't escalate conflicts recklessly. They exhausted every path before resorting to force. But once they committed, they ended hostilities with decisive finality. They dismantled fleets, rebuilt conquered territories, and integrated former enemies with speed the Council found unsettling. Nothing about their approach resembled traditional territorial expansion. Instead, they acted like a species solving problems. Enemies were obstacles, not rivals. When humans neutralized threats, they moved on without ceremony, leaving analysts with no stable behavioral pattern to anchor future projections. This unpredictability fueled differing theories within the Council. Some argued the refusal was strategic, a signal that humans were preparing a defensive position. Others insisted it embodied their cultural emphasis on autonomy, meaning the Council's coercive tone had triggered a psychological boundary. A smaller faction feared the worst, that humans possessed capabilities the Council had not accounted for, and now considered negotiation unnecessary. That possibility terrified the older empires, whose dominance relied on maintaining an illusion of total control. Complicating matters further was humanity's reputation among younger species. While the Council viewed humans with caution, many minor civilizations regarded them as dependable allies. They traded fairly, shared technology, and intervened during crises without expectation of reward. This loyalty had not gone unnoticed. Some delegates worried that humanity's refusal could inspire smaller powers to challenge the Council's authority. If humans withdrew cooperation, dozens of worlds might follow, destabilizing political structures built over millennia. The refusal wasn't just a diplomatic disruption, it threatened the Council's legitimacy. Every attempt to determine humanity's motives only revealed how little the Council truly understood them. Analysts replayed their message again, searching for hidden meaning. There was none. Humans did not obscure their intentions behind coded language or ritual phrasing. They communicated with the same clarity they used when speaking to their own people. The Council, long accustomed to manipulation and layered diplomacy, failed to grasp that directness. What they perceived as a warning might simply have been a statement of principle. Meanwhile, fleet commanders drafted response strategies based on incomplete intelligence. Proposals ranged from strengthening borders to deploying reconnaissance units near human territory. Yet each option carried risks. A single misinterpretation could trigger a confrontation no one wanted. Military advisors cautioned against provocation, recalling the rapid escalation during humanity's early conflicts. They reminded the Council that humans rarely initiated aggression, but retaliated with overwhelming efficiency when threatened. Internal divisions widened as reports circulated of human colonies operating at unprecedented productivity levels. Their industries grew rapidly, unburdened by the constraints of older civilizations. The Council feared what such momentum could achieve if directed toward conflict. They imagined fleets equipped with prototypes beyond their understanding, strategies that bypassed established warfare conventions, and alliances that reshaped political boundaries. Through all the analysis, one conclusion emerged consistently: humanity's refusal was not impulsive. It came from a civilization comfortable making hard choices without external approval. They did not rely on the Council to validate their decisions or secure their survival. That independence shattered long-standing assumptions about how younger species behaved. The Council finally understood the true source of their fear. Humanity represented a new kind of power, one that did not seek dominance, yet could not be dominated. A species capable of cooperation without submission, strength without arrogance, and defiance without chaos. Their refusal did not signal hostility. It signaled autonomy. And for an institution built on controlling the direction of galactic civilization, autonomy from a species as capable as humanity was a threat more destabilizing than war. For 48 hours, humanity's silence rippled across the galaxy like a slow-forming storm. It was not the silence of indecision or hesitation. It was the quiet that came before a species acted with purpose. The Council, accustomed to immediate responses from lesser civilizations, found itself staring at blank communication logs while fear tightened its grip on every delegate. They monitored every human channel, but nothing emerged except routine civilian chatter. That made things worse. A species preparing for war usually displayed tension. Humans continued daily life as if nothing had happened, giving analysts no emotional cues to interpret. Silence from a species known for decisive action was more unsettling than open defiance. As the hours stretched, rumors spread across Council space. Border systems reported human trading ships altering their routes without explanation, shifting to encrypted pathways that no Council algorithm could trace. Civilian vessels entering human territory reported new scanning patterns unlike anything seen before. Fleets stationed near human borders suddenly detected subtle quantum fluctuations suggesting that humanity had updated its defensive grid. None of these actions were hostile, yet each implied that humans were reorganizing with precision. The Council interpreted it as preparation for a moment when negotiation was no longer an option. Political networks erupted in panic. Civilizations dependent on human engineering feared supply disruptions. Worlds whose medical systems integrated human biotech began stockpiling resources. Even empires accustomed to projecting dominance grew uneasy. Humanity was not posturing publicly, yet the silent reconfiguration of their infrastructure resembled the calm before a decisive shift. The Council convened emergency sessions attempting to decode meaning from the silence, but every answer clashed with another. Some believed humans were preparing a diplomatic counterstrike. Others insisted they were readying fleets. A few whispered that humans were simply ignoring the Council entirely, moving forward with their own agenda. When the human transmission finally arrived, it was short but devastating. No aggression. No anger. Just a precise breakdown of every lie, manipulation, and falsified report the Council had relied on to justify summoning humanity under threat. Attached were decrypted internal Council logs that stunned every delegate. Humans had not merely discovered the Council's deception, they had traced the origin of each manipulated incident, identified the individuals responsible, and compiled a complete dossier of evidence. The Council realized, with mounting dread, that humanity had been monitoring their political networks with ease. The tone of the message was not confrontational. That only amplified its impact. Humans stated that negotiations conducted under fabricated circumstances violated their foundational principles. Trust, they explained, could not exist alongside coercion. They had rejected the Council's summons because the summons itself was illegitimate. No accusations? No demands? Just facts delivered with clinical precision. And beneath that simplicity was the implication that humanity had access to classified information the Council considered unreachable. The chamber erupted into chaos as delegates struggled to reconcile what they had learned. Humanity had the ability to penetrate supposedly secure channels without any detectable intrusion. Their refusal had not been a declaration of hostility, but a rejection of a system built on manipulation. This honesty was more shocking than any threat the Council anticipated. A species that exposed deception without leveraging fear suggested a level of moral authority the Council had never encountered. That revelation destabilized the galaxy far more than any military action could have. If humans could access those logs, what else could they see? If they could dismantle false narratives so easily, how many other political constructs were vulnerable? The transmission ended with a simple statement: humanity would not participate in negotiations conducted in bad faith. No demands followed. No threats hung in the air. Yet the Council felt as if an entire armada had appeared at their doorstep. The silence after the message was worse than the silence before it. Humanity had not escalated. They had not retaliated. They had simply revealed the truth and withdrawn. And the Council understood, with chilling clarity, that a species capable of exposing their internal machinations without seeking advantage was a species operating on a plane beyond their control. Humanity's withdrawal began without spectacle, without announcements, without the confrontational energy the Council expected. One by one, joint projects withered as human personnel quietly departed. Research stations near shared borders went dark as humans recalled their scientists. Trade networks that had relied on human logistical efficiency slowed immediately. Nothing about the process resembled retaliation. It looked like a species stepping out of a room they no longer considered worth standing in. And that calm disengagement terrified the Council more than any mobilization could have. Within days, human-controlled jump gates sealed themselves behind new quantum locks. These gates had been critical arteries of interstellar movement, stabilizing travel through volatile regions. The moment they went offline, entire trade corridors collapsed. Merchant fleets scrambled to reroute, only to discover that alternate pathways were slower and far more dangerous. Civilizations that had quietly leaned on human reliability suddenly felt exposed. The Council rushed to reassure member states, but the cracks spread too quickly. Every species affected by the shutdown understood an uncomfortable truth: humans had not weaponized their infrastructure, they had simply taken back what was theirs. As the Council scrambled to contain the fallout, they realized how deeply humanity's presence had been woven into galactic systems. Human technicians had optimized traffic flow in congested regions, adjusted failing atmospheric regulators on struggling colonies, and maintained power grids that older empires had left decaying. Without that constant intervention, outdated systems began to fail. Not catastrophically, but steadily enough to create unease. Civilian broadcasts from distant worlds expressed concerns the Council had never anticipated. People trusted humanity's engineering more than the Council's assurances, and that trust shifted public opinion in unpredictable ways. Delegates feared that withdrawing from negotiations was only the first step. If humans continued pulling back, entire regions would lose stability. The Council saw a future where humanity's absence reshaped political landscapes without firing a single shot. They tried to open new channels, using softer language this time, but every message went unanswered. Not blocked, not rejected, ignored. That indifference felt more dangerous than hostility. A hostile species could be reasoned with or countered. A species that simply walked away was beyond influence. Younger civilizations, long frustrated with Council oversight, began to question their allegiance. They remembered how humans had arrived during famine crises with supplies, not conditions. How human medics had treated their wounded without demanding compensation. How human explorers shared route data freely, helping fledgling colonies avoid dangerous regions. Now those same species watched the Council struggle to manage a situation humanity had solved effortlessly for years. Their confidence shifted toward the power that had quietly supported them, not the institution that now appeared fragile. The Council attempted to frame humanity's withdrawal as irresponsible. But leaked documents, compiled by anonymous analysts, revealed how often humans had repaired Council mistakes behind the scenes. The narrative reversed almost overnight. Instead of seeing humans as unpredictable rebels, many began to view them as the stabilizing force the galaxy had taken for granted. Meanwhile, human space remained calm and focused. Civilian life continued with practiced efficiency. Their fleets did not deploy aggressively, but their patrol routes shifted with deliberate precision, signaling that they were reinforcing borders, not preparing for conquest. Their industries operated at full output, expanding rather than contracting. From a distance, humanity appeared entirely unconcerned with the Council's turmoil, as if they had already moved beyond the confrontation. For the Council, the most disturbing realization was that humanity had not retaliated at all. They had not issued demands, extracted concessions, or broadcast accusations. They acted as though the Council's authority no longer mattered. That quiet rejection carried weight no military engagement could equal. A superpower could be deterred or negotiated with. But a species that refused to treat the Council as relevant undermined the foundation of galactic politics. By the time the Council understood the full implications, the damage was irreversible. Humanity had demonstrated a truth the galaxy had avoided confronting. Their power did not depend on treaties, influence, or intimidation. It came from capability, competence, and the loyalty they inspired through action rather than rhetoric. And now that such a species had stepped away from the table, the Council found itself grasping for control in a galaxy no longer convinced it needed them. Border fleets stationed near human space expected tension, but they were not prepared for what their sensors revealed. At first, the readings seemed like errors, energy signatures far exceeding known propulsion limits, construction activity on a scale that dwarfed entire Council shipyards, and artificial structures forming around stars in patterns that shouldn't have been possible. Engineers recalibrated equipment repeatedly, yet every adjustment returned the same results. Humanity wasn't preparing for war. They were expanding, innovating, and evolving at a pace no institution in the galaxy could match. The Council expected retaliation or defense maneuvers. Instead, they witnessed the civilization accelerating into a new era without a single glance toward the political chaos brewing behind them. Human megastructures rose like quiet declarations of independence. Vast fabrication rings encircled remote planets, assembling vessels with silhouettes no analyst could classify. Power outputs exceeded theoretical models, forcing scientists to rewrite principles they once considered immutable. Human colonies thrived without reliance on Council infrastructure, demonstrating technological leaps that felt unnervingly deliberate. It was clear these advancements hadn't begun after the diplomatic breakdown. They were the continuation of projects the Council never realized existed. Humanity's refusal to negotiate had not stalled their momentum. It had simply removed an obstacle that tried to constrain it. As reports reached the Council, panic spread faster than any hostile fleet could travel. Delegates realized their worst fears were misplaced. Humanity was not preparing for conflict against the Council. They were preparing for something larger, something that rendered old power structures irrelevant. The more the Council analyzed the expansion, the clearer the conclusion became. Humanity had outgrown the political games that defined the galaxy. Their silence had not been a threat but a statement of priority. They were no longer interested in being managed, categorized, or placed within someone else's hierarchy. Attempts to re-establish contact became frantic. Messages framed in respectful tones were transmitted hourly, each more desperate than the last. Yet humanity remained silent. Their borders stayed open to civilian travelers, proving they had no intention of isolating themselves, but they refused all diplomatic overtures from the Council. Observers noted that humans communicated freely with independent systems and scientific coalitions, reinforcing that the refusal targeted the Council specifically, not the wider galaxy. That distinction deepened the humiliation. The Council had been singled out as unworthy of engagement. Fear among older empires intensified when reconnaissance teams detected new human vessels departing at speeds that defied established physics. These ships vanished into deep space without identifiable jump signatures, leaving only distortions along the fabric of spacetime. Analysts could not determine their destination or purpose. Theories ranged from extragalactic expeditions to experimental travel beyond known dimensions. Whatever the truth, it confirmed that humanity's ambitions extended far beyond the reach of political institutions that once believed themselves eternal. When humanity finally transmitted a message, it was calm and brief. They stated they held no hostility and sought no conflict. Their refusal came from a simple principle: negotiations required honesty, and the Council had violated that foundation. They concluded with a final line that struck harder than any threat. "We are moving forward. Do not interfere." There was no ultimatum. No demand for reparations. Just a boundary, clear, firm, and backed by capability the Council could not challenge. The Council chamber fell into stunned silence. They had imagined war, sanctions, or retaliation. Instead, humanity denied them relevance. That dismissal cut deeper than any military confrontation. A species that no longer required the Council's approval held a form of power impossible to contain. Delegates understood then that humanity's refusal wasn't defiance. It was evolution. They had stepped beyond the reach of institutions built on control, leaving the galaxy to grapple with a truth it had avoided for centuries. A quiet human, focused on its own future, was far more terrifying than any conqueror. Humanity had not risen to challenge the Council. They had risen above it.